Today, I will be ranking every Illumination movie besides Hop. And by the way, all these rankings are my opinions. Alright, let's get in with the first movie, Despicable Me. So, Despicable Me is probably the best Minion movie ever made. So, basically, it's all about this guy called Gru who wants to steal the moon because he's a supervillain and is trying to prove himself. But there's this guy called Vector who stops him. How, you may ask? Well, in order to steal the moon, he needs to steal the shrink ray. And so, Vector steals the shrink ray off of Gru. Makes total sense. And so he needs to break into his evil lair to get it back. So, what does he do? He adopts 3 orphan girls so he can be able to get into there, steal the shrink ray, and then go steal the moon. But then these 3 orphan girls not only just get him the shrink ray, but also show him all how to be a father. And this makes Gru really happy, and so eventually when he does steal the moon, he ends up actually not doing it, and instead goes to save the 3 orphan girls who have been kidnapped by Vector. And so he beats up Vector, puts the moon back in his place, and saves the 3 orphan girls, and then they all live happily ever after. So it was a pretty good movie. Nice. I'm gonna give this movie an 8 here. Alright, we're off to a good start. Which movie is next? And oh my god. Alright, so the Lorax is probably the worst Illumination movie ever made. I know, it is so bad, I can't even comprehend it. So basically it's about this kid who loves this girl, but this girl is obsessed with trees, which for some reason look like this. I mean, you get used to it. And so he goes on a mission to find a tree. And he finds this one guy who talks about a story about how the Lorax and how he destroyed all the trees or whatever. I can't be bothered to describe what happened. Anyway, then this evil company guy person goes and tries to stop the kid from making trees again. But then they stop him and this movie's an after. Anyway, next we have Despicable Me 2. So basically, Despicable Me 2 is all about Gru wanting to get a partner, but he's too scared to. In this time, he meets Lucy, who ends up asking him if he wants to be a part of the hero agency, which he oftenly declines with a literal freeze ray. But, I mean, this wouldn't stop him though, as he would actually end up going on the mission in the end, and in the process he ends up loving Lucy. But when Lucy and him actually finish the mission, it ends up making Gru really sad because he will never see her again. But in the meantime, he meets Macho, who turns out to be using Gru's minions to be able to take over the world. But then, him and Lucy reunite and stop him. They get married, the end. Anyway, I thought this was a pretty decent film, so I'm going to give it a B tier. Anyways, next we have The Minions, which is a pretty bad movie, I ain't gonna lie. So basically, it follows the life of the Minions trying to find a new villain, so they can serve them. But in the process they meet Scarlet Overkill, who turns out to be one of the best villains ever in the history of villains. But it turns out that Scarlet Overkill wants to steal the crown from England. I don't know why. Guess she just wants to rule. Yeah, so she hires the minions to do it, and they actually end up becoming the king in the process. But this makes Scarlet Overkill mad and she tries to kill them or whatever. But, I mean, it's just pretty stupid. They stop Scarlet Overkill and then they meet Gru in the end. But, I mean, like, it's still a really bad film. Anyway, I think I might give it a C tier because I'm feeling pretty generous today. Alright, next up we have The Secret Life of Pets, which I'm going to be honest is a pretty mediocre film. I ain't gonna lie. Anyway, so basically it's about this dog called Max, who gets his new dog, who I can't even remember the name of. Anyway, but then it turns out that they don't like each other. Then apparently they get lost from home and have to find their way back. And I mean, it's just, they go into like these like stupid scenarios. I mean, like, there's literally a scene where they go and eat a bunch of sausages. I mean, it's just so weird. But, I mean, then they learn to love each other and happy ending. Yeah, I think I might give this film a C tier. Next, we have probably one of the best Illumination movies ever made, Sing. So basically, Sing's about this koala who wants to go up in the world in his theatre. But in order to do that, he needs to have a winning idea. So, he's going to make a singing competition with an award of £1,000. But it ends up going bad, and then it turns into a £100,000 prize, which turns out to be really, really bad. Then everyone is fighting for the prize, and then eventually he picks the singers who turns out to be really good. My personal favourite is Johnny, by the way. Just throwing that out there. Anyway, but then everything goes wrong. But when finally things are looking up, the theatre floods. Anyway, then the koala goes all depressed and boo-hoo. But all the singers get up and they build the theatre, they put on the show, it turns out to be really good, and happy ending. Anyway, this movie is definitely getting an S tier. Alright, next we have Despicable Me 3. Jesus, why are there so many Minion movies on this list? Just make it stop. Anyway, so basically it's about Gru and Lucy going to stop Evil Brad, but they end up failing, and Evil Brad ends up getting this diamond, which he is using to power this robot. Anyway, in this time, Gru ends up learning that he has a secret twin, so he goes to meet them there on a nice family holiday, but nothing could ever go wrong. But it turns out that Drew, who is Gru's brother, wants to be a villain just like he did. But Gru has to teach him how to be a secret spy. Anyway, so basically, they go on the mission and they steal the diamond off of Evil Brad because, the movie has to happen. Anyway, so basically, after that, Evil Brad does a very good plot twist, steals the diamond again, uses a robot, but then Gru beats him, and the end. Anyway, next up we have the Grinch, which is basically about the Grinch wanting to steal Christmas, because that's the main thing about Grinch. But then he ends up getting captured by this kid named Cindy Lou, who wants to prove that Santa is real so she can make a wish with her mum. Anyway, so basically what happens is the Grinch lies to her, telling her that he is Santa Claus. He steals Christmas, but then he feels really, really bad, and then he ends up just putting it back, and happy ending. Anyway, I think I'm going to give this movie a B tier. Next we have the best Illumination movie ever made, Sing 2. So basically, Sing 2 is all about the gang going into one of the big cities, Metro City, so they can perform a show. Anyway, so they get approved by Mr. Crystal. How, you may ask? Well, apparently Gunter, the pig, starts talking about how they will get Clay Calloway in their show. So, what does Moon do? Well, of course, he lies! He literally has learned nothing from the last film. Anyway, but then they practice in the show, but there seems to be a lot of problems, like Johnny's teacher, Nina's love interest, all that good stuff. But in the end, they actually finish it out. Even though Mr. Crystal literally tries to kill them, they still perform the show, they get Clay Calloway, and they all lived happily ever after. Anyway, this movie is definitely yes tier. Next up, with the final Despicable Me / Minion movie on this list, Minions Rise of Gru, which I must say was a pleasant surprise. So basically, it's all about Gru wanting to be a supervillain, so he decides to steal something off of the Vicious Six so he can prove himself. But then, one of the minions ends up losing it, and so he shouts at them and then goes on a mission to rescue it. Then he gets captured by Wild Knuckles, so the minions have to go and rescue him. Anyway, the minions learn Kung Fu and whatever, but Wild Knuckles, who's captured him, ends up talking about him and teaches them ways of how to be a villain. Anyway, in the end, they all reunite together and beat up the Vicious Six, and also Wild Knuckles fakes his death, which, is a little cameo to what he does in Despicable Me 3, as he says one day he wants to fake his death, and he fakes his death in Despicable Me 3. I thought it was really cool. Anyway, this movie's A tier. Next we have the Mario movie, which is probably one of the better Illumination films. So basically, it's all about Mario and Luigi wanting to go up in the world in the plumbing business. But when Mario realizes that they can save Brooklyn, he takes the opportunity, but they end up getting sucked down a pipe. Luigi ends up in Bowser's Kingdom, and Mario ends up in the Mushroom Kingdom, so Mario has to go rescue him with Peach. Anyway, then they have this cool montage where Mario learns how to, be Mario. But on their way, they encounter many problems, such as Donkey Kong, all that good stuff. But eventually, when they do arrive, they save Luigi, they beat up Bowser, and they all lived happily ever after. Anyway, this movie's an A tier. And finally, we have Migration, which is actually a really good film. So basically, it's all about a family of ducks. Dax, Mac, Gwen, and Pam. And they all want to go on some sort of family migration. Everyone except for Mac. But after Mac has a little talk with Uncle Dan, they all decide to go on them, including Uncle Dan, who is probably the funniest character. Anyway, and that's where they meet some two important characters. One of them is Chum, who decides to show them all about the city and shows them to Leroy, forget his name. Anyway, who decides to show them where to get to Jamaica, because that's where they're migrating to. And that's where they meet the chef, who is the main villain in the film, who wants to cook them. Anyway, after a few more confrontations, they beat up the chef. They sort of defeat him in a very gruesome way. I mean, he's probably gonna explode or die soon. Yeah, but this movie is still really good. 8. And that is all of the Illumination films ranked. By the way, these are all my opinions, and I will see you all in the next one. Be sure to subscribe!